Hi aspirants, welcome to SRV's weekly current affairs discussion for science and technology. Today's first topic is about GSAT 7B. This GSAT, we know that it has been in the news for years together. It is like we can take like the geography or geographical satellites. Simply it is around the earth. We are stationing it across the earth to observe the earth. This is the main reason, and each version of it is for a particular purpose. Some are for communication, some are for army purposes, and some are for our neighboring countries, and so on. Now this GSAT 7B satellite, the news because recently it got the acceptance of necessity from the defense ministry, and it will be dedicated satellite for the Indian army. So 7B, this is dedicated for the army. That is what we have to remember here. The army's vast array of radio communication equipment could come under a single platform with this satellite. So they are bringing all the communication equipment under a single platform using this satellite. So this is going to enhance the surveillance in the border areas. So all this Pulwama attack and all these things, the blame was on the intelligence. We are not able to stop terrorist attack before it happens. After it happens, whether we go for a retaliation or for any sort of strike or whatever, it's fine. But how about stopping it before it happens? So it is intelligence failure. So this 7B is going to increase the surveillance. In that case, it is meaning that we are going to enhance surveillance and intelligence. So it is particularly for the communication needs of the army. This is developed by ISRO for defense services, and how far it can reach, the footprint of this is 2000 nautical miles in the Indian Ocean region. And apart from this, there is another version which is the GSAT 7 Rukmini, and this is India's first military satellite. All these, I hope you can see that these are important prelims points. Rukmini is the India's first military satellite, and this GSAT 7A was launched in 2018, and this was launched to boost the connectivity between the ground radar stations, air bases, and airborne early warning and control aircraft, which is shortly called as AEW and C. Something we would have already discussed about AWACS, right? This is something related to that, something like that. And this is for the Indian Air Force. So you can see when we used to discuss about this in our classroom, I gave it a clue for this. So A, GSAT 7 is the common word. A for Air Force. That is how we used to remember this. This GSAT 7A is particularly for the Indian Air Force. The next topic is about the Voyager spacecraft. So now we are going to see about this Voyager spacecraft to know some details about this, which is in news. So now let us say this is the solar system, and or let us say this is the orbit of the earth. We have the orbit of the earth. So this is the earth, this is the sun, and we know, let us imagine this is the entire solar system, and we know the Voyager has already crossed beyond the solar system and it's flying away from the solar system. But there are certain times the distance between the earth and the spacecraft, this Voyager spacecraft, decreases drastically. When does this happen? See, you can see that the earth keeps revolving around the sun like this. Some point of time the earth comes towards the satellite, on the satellite's side. So at this time the distance between the Voyager spacecraft and the earth reduces. Why this happens is because of the speed difference between the spacecraft and the earth. The revolution speed of earth is much faster when compared to the speed at which the Voyager spacecraft is moving. Now some details about this Voyager mission. This mission, it was only meant to explore the outer planets, but it is kept on going. So we are trying that maybe we could get more information beyond the solar system as well. And this Voyager spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, are the third and the fourth human spacecraft to fly beyond all the planets in our solar system, that is to go beyond the solar system. Before that, it has been achieved by the Pioneer 10 and the Pioneer 11. And Voyager 1 left our solar system in the year 2013. And something else, in 1998, the Voyager 1, it passed the Pioneer 10 to become the most distant human-made object in the space. So, because Voyager speed is more than the Pioneer. And getting back to this same detail. So, why the distance between the Earth and the Voyager spacecraft decreases at certain times? Now, you see the Earth's motion around the Sun is faster than the motion or the speed of the Voyager spacecraft. Earth moves at a speed of 67,000 miles per hour, or simply 30 kilometers per second. This is the speed of the Earth's revolution. It is 30 kilometers per second. But on the other hand, the speed of the Voyager aircraft is 17 kilometers per second. So you can imagine it's almost like double the speed. So that is why we can see that the Earth reaches near the Voyager at some particular point of time, that is when it reaches on this side. And one more thing, the speed of the Voyager 2 is 15 kilometers per second. So sometimes this also could be asked, Voyager 1 is faster actually than Voyager 2. So these are some details. Since this is specifically in the news, it's better to know these values as well. So Earth's revolution speed is 30 kilometers per second. Voyager 1 17 kilometers per second, and Voyager 2 is 15 kilometers per second. And some details about Voyager 2. This is the only probe ever to study Neptune and Uranus. So as it was flying past the solar system, it took some time to study Neptune and Uranus, and it is Voyager 2. And this is the second man-made object to leave our planet, and the only spacecraft to have visited all 4 gas giant planets, that's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. So Voyager 2 has the specialty of visiting all the 4 gas giant planets. And apart from that, it has done something like it has discovered 16 moons. It has discovered the phenomena like the Neptune's mysteriously transient great dark spot. That is, it has discovered about the Neptune's great dark spot. The cracks in the Europa's ice shell. Europa is the moon of Jupiter, we know that. And the ring features of the other planets as well. Apart from the Saturn, there are other planets also have ring. All these were discovered by Voyager 2. So Voyager 2 has a list of discoveries in its pocket. And discussing about this, we have to know some details about the geographical terms here. For example, one is the heliosphere. The heliosphere is a bubble around the sun created by the outward flow of the solar wind. We have discussed a lot about the solar wind, and this solar wind, as it reaches something somewhat a little bit out of the solar system, creates a bubble like structure. And when the solar wind is moving out from the sun, outwards from the solar system, there is another force which acts in opposite direction, that is inward towards the solar system. That is the interstellar wind. So when these both meet, it creates a bubble like structure. So the heliosphere is the region influenced by the dynamic properties of the sun, which are carried by the solar wind, such as magnetic field, energy particles, solar wind plasma, all these things. So the magnetic fields, the energetic particles, solar plasma, all these factors influence in forming this heliosphere. So in this picture, you can see this. So what is the heliopause? And heliopause, it is the boundary, heliosphere, and the beginning of the interstellar space. What is the interstellar space? The region after or beyond the solar system is called as the interstellar space. So the boundary between the heliospace here, this whole bubble, this heliospace, and the outer interstellar, the boundary is called as heliopause. So UPSC is known to ask factual, direct, conventional questions from geography whenever there are some science and tech current affairs in news. So we have to combine both. So know to answer such questions, know these details. The next topic is about GSLV F10, the next satellite, or which is also called as the EOS-3 mission. So this GSLV F10 is a Earth observation satellite. So it was launched in 2021. So this is very near. So we have to know it. But it failed. Something to be noted is it failed because of the deviation in the performance of the cryogenic upper stage. I hope you know we are struggling with this cryogenic engine for decades together. And now it's the latest news that we are able to manufacture our own cryogenic engine and use it, but still we are struggling with this cryogenic engine. There's a huge history for this, which includes the USA, the USSR, and now the Russia and India. It's a huge story about how we are not able to get the cryogenic engine, because cryogenic engine, it's a very powerful engine where it can be used in missiles which could move from continents to continents. So that is why certain nations don't want India to get cryogenic engines from other countries. So we are having no other option other than to build our own cryogenic engine. So the GSLV F10, it was an ISRO's 8th flight with indigenous cryogenic engine. Apart from this, it is the 14th GSLV flight, but it is the 8th flight with indigenous cryogenic. For that we used to get it from others, or we didn't use cryogenic. This is the 8th time we are using the cryogenic engine. And what is the EOS-3 mission? It was the first state-of-the-art agile Earth observation satellite which would have been placed in the geosynchronous orbit around Earth. If this project was a success, this EOS mission would have been a success where an observation satellite would have been placed around the Earth. So it was expected that it will provide real-time imaging, which will be helping in quick monitoring of natural disasters and so on. So all these were expected to happen, but this mission is a failure and we'll be trying it again. And what is GSLV? It is expanded as Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. So GSLV and PSLV, they are just vehicles which launch the satellites, we know that. And some important information is GSLV Mark II is the largest launch vehicle ever built by India. You have to know this. GSLV Mark II is the largest vehicle built by India. And it can launch satellites that will travel in orbits that are synchronous with the Earth's orbit. So this, as the name suggests, as you have this S for synchronous, the satellites which are launched by this GSLV will be traveling in orbit which is in the Earth's revolution path. So if the Earth is like this, have the equator, so the Earth is revolving or rotating in this way, so the satellite will also be launched there. Now some important details. So these satellites can weigh up to 2,500 kilograms. So the such heavy satellites can be launched by this GSLV. And to launch such heavy vehicles, we use, and some details of the satellite. These satellites can weigh up to 2,500 kilograms. And to launch such heavy satellites and to such huge distances, we use a method like, first it will be launched to the transfer orbit, and then they will have a distance from the Earth of just 170 kilometers, that is just close to the Earth, and then about 35,975 kilometers as the next further approach. First it will, like, see here, first this is the Earth's orbit. Now first it will be launched to the transfer orbit, which is like 170 kilometers, and from there it will go to the next higher orbits where the distance will be somewhere around 35,975 kilometers, and it will be placed in the geosynchronous orbit, as we said. Now in orbital mechanics, the Hohmann transfit orbit is an elliptical orbit used to transfer between two circular orbits of different radii. So you have to know this term, this Hohmann transfer orbit. So what is this orbit? It is the transfer orbit in an elliptical orbit. So it is used, why we have this Hohmann transfer orbit? To transfer between two circular orbits. So you can see that you have one orbit here, it's too difficult and it's much fuel consuming to directly reach to this longer orbit. So first you reach to the transfer orbit, and from there using a catapult motion it will go to the outer orbit. So this is how GSLV rockets launch the satellites in large, long, huge orbits. Now some differences between PSLV and GSLV. PSLV, or the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. So this launch low Earth orbits into the polar and sun synchronous orbits. So what is the polar? So this is the Earth. We have the North Pole here, South Pole here. So from this we can know that the path is going to be like this. The path of the satellite is going to be from the poles to poles. So that is how PSLV rockets launch the satellites. And what about the GSLV? They launch heavier satellites in the geosynchronous orbit and in much higher heights also. They are not at the low Earth orbit, they are at the higher Earth orbits. And now GSLV uses the indigenously developed cryogenic upper stage. So the last stage of this GSLV is the cryogenic stage, and we have successfully developed it indigenously as well after decades of hard work. Now the difference between geosynchronous and sun synchronous orbits. So if you see the geosynchronous, it is about 36,000 kilometers high from the Earth, and it is in sync with the Earth's rotation, the Earth's orbit. So as the Earth is rotating, so we know the Earth is a little bit tilted, like 23.5 degrees it is tilted. So the Earth will be, the poles are, it's like revolving like this. So in that same path the satellite will be placed. This is how geosynchronous satellites are placed. And see, you can see here geostationary satellites will be placed along the plane, equatorial plane. You can see that it's at the plane, but geosynchronous, it is in sync with the exactly the orbit in which the Earth rotates. So what about sun synchronous satellites or polar satellites? Here you can see the path will be like this, it will be rotating. These are sun synchronous orbits. So you can see that clearly in this picture. See here, this is the polar satellite, this is the polar path, and this is sun synchronous. A little bit tilted is the sun synchronous, and equatorial is just at the equatorial plane. And then you have the geosynchronous, which is much above, somewhere around 36,000 kilometers, but in the same orbit in which the Earth rotates. And apart from this, we have one more orbit in which satellites are launched, which is the elliptical orbit. Here you can see at some point of time. So these are statements given in UPSC prelims questions. If a satellite is launched in the elliptical orbit, at some point of time they will be much nearer to the Earth, and at some point of time they will be much farther from the Earth. We see concepts like perigee, apogee and all, right? So that concept will be established by these elliptical orbit satellites. But other satellites like the polar, the geosynchronous, all these things, they just travel in equidistant way. And one more thing about the polar satellite is, so every time they reach that same place every day. For example, I can see a satellite from here at 2 p.m. Let us say, for example, I can see a satellite from here at 2 p.m. Let us say, for example, that same 2 p.m. I will see it every day. This is a sun synchronous satellite. And what about a geostationary satellite? In a geostationary satellite, the satellite rotates at the same speed at the Earth rotates. So if I see a satellite, it seems to be stationary, it seems to be standing there, because it is in rotation with at the same speed with the Earth. So it seems to be like it is stationed there. So these are geostationary satellites. So you can see here this is how geostationary satellites are, and they move at the same speed of the Earth. And this is the polar satellite orbit. In this orbit, the satellite moves in such a speed that every day it crosses a particular place at that particular time without any difference. This is the quality of sun synchronous satellites. So these are statements which could be asked in UPSC prelims exams, so you have to know them. The next topic is about INS Valsura. So mostly when we see this word IS and INS, we would think it would be a battleship or it could be a submarine or something like that. But this Valsura, it is just a university, that is a training university. So this is Navy's premier technological training establishment. It's a training center. Now this is in news because the president's color is bestowed on a military unit in recognition of exceptional services rendered to the nation, and this has been given to this Valsura now. This INS Valsura, it is a premier technological training institution of the Indian Navy. It is in Gujarat, and something to be noted is it is Indian Navy's oldest training institute. The next topic is about dare to irrad. So simply it is dare to simply, so it means a dare to eradicate. We are trying to eradicate something and it is eradicating TB or tuberculosis. So this dare to irrad is a data driven research to eradicate tuberculosis. So you collect data about patients, the doctors, their prescriptions, so that you monitor them to effectively eradicate TB. So this is undertaken by Department of Biotechnology under Ministry of Science and Technology. So this is going to be an umbrella TB program of DBT comprising of following key initiatives. So what are the initiatives under this program? This is under the Department of Biotechnology. So we have something called as INTGS. So it means Indian Tuberculosis Genomic Surveillance Consortium. So we are going to have a surveillance of how many people are having this disease, how much they have been cured, and so on. And then Indian TB Hub or the Indian TB Knowledge Hub webinar series. So the host directed therapies against TB and developing an evidence-based regime for treating extrapulmonary tuberculosis. So you don't have to think so much about this statement. Simply they are finding platforms to discuss so that you could eradicate tuberculosis. That's it. The next topic is about doxing. It's again in news. So UPSC is known to ask questions which is related to cyber, and doxing, which we have already discussed elaborately, and now since it's in news, we'll just go through it once again. What is doxing? It is publishing and analyzing others' personal information. This is the key here, because UPSC is known to give a statement regarding cyber, and they'll give different statements which all the statements are correct but for another meaning. But here doxing means you publish others' personal information on the internet with a malicious intent that can reveal the person's real identity, making them victims of harassment and cyber attacks. So everyone has something called as privacy. Everyone have their own private life. So you go and publish someone else's personal information. Using that person could be defamed in any way, or they could be asked some ransom. They could be undergoing cyber attack, harassment, all these things. So this is called as doxing. So remember this term, doxing. Simply it is publishing someone's personal information. This is the keyword here. The next one is about the kamikaze drones, which are very frequently in news because many countries are having them nowadays. And what is this kamikaze drone and why it is so important? One important thing about this kamikaze drones is you can see from this picture. You can see the size of this drone. Just see the size of this drone. It is at the size of like our forearm. That's all. This can be easily carried in a backpack. That's it. But this is a drone. These are unmanned aircraft that are part of the tranche of weapons that are being sent by the US to Ukraine to assist in the fight against Russia. This is the news. So USA is sending them to Ukraine to help Ukraine against Russia. These drones are also called as switchblade drones. See this in the picture, they don't have any blade, they don't have any wing. But see in this picture, they are having wings. So that is because once they are launched, the wings shoot out and then they start flying. So that is why they are called as switchable drones. And they don't go and launch any missiles. This drone is the missile itself. They will go and just hit any target and they will blast. It's like it is also the vehicle, it is also the warhead. That is the specialty of this kamikaze drones, and it is very small in size. It is just 5.5 pounds. That's it. It's just 5.5 pounds. So approximately somewhere 2.5 kilograms. That's it. And it has a small warhead with it, and it has a switchable blade, and it can be taken in a small backpack, and it can travel 7 miles. See the size, but it travels to 7 miles. The next topic is about the DISHAANK app. So this app, this project, if it's really going to be a success, it's going to be a great relief for many people across the India. We'll see why. So what is the DISHAANK app? It is to access the land records. That's it. So it is developed under the Geographical Information System program, that is the GIS program of Karnataka State Remote Sensing Application Center. So simply it is remote sensing. That's it. So remote sensing, what do we use for remote sensing? We use GIS software. Even now, if any one of you are civil engineers, you will be knowing about this. That's it. So why we are using this? Simply to digitize land records under the Bhumi project. Already Karnataka has been undergoing this project Bhumi, and why they are doing this? To digitize the land records, and now they are bringing it under just a smartphone app. So this DISHAANK app helps Karnataka's decision to digitize land records under the Bhumi project. So now what is the objective of this app is to enable citizens to avail the information about the land and its ownership as recorded in the Bhumi database. See how important it's going to be. You would have heard somewhere at least once in life where people buy land, they invest lakhs of amount and buy a land, and they later come to know that they have bought that land from a person whom that land does not belong to, or that land is in some sort of case in the court. So this land cannot be used now. It is like an illegal land. So they come to know this only later on. So this is the trouble. So when you are going to buy a land, it's a huge process first to confirm whether that land is proper and legal. But now this is going to be so easy. You just open the DISHAANK app, give the survey number of that land, and you'll get all the details. Who is the owner of that land, whether there's any case on that land or whatever, and you are sure whether to buy that land or not, you're safe or not. See how a big boon this is going to be. Because once you buy a land, later you come to know that that land is in some sort of conflict, or that land does not belong to the person from whom you bought that land from. You go for a case, a civil case, and that case happens for 20 years, and your life is over by then, and all the money which you have saved for your entire life to buy a land has gone. So this is a life or death situation. For this, a simple mobile app is going to give a solution. So definitely this is an appreciable initiative. We have to wait and see how far this is going to be a success. The next one is hydrogen powered car, which we have already discussed, and again it's in news because there is something specific going to happen. There's going to be a collaboration, that is Toyota Kirloskar Motor Private Limited and International Center for Automotive Technology, that is India's ICAT, have initiated a pilot project to study and evaluate the world's most advanced hydrogen electric vehicle. That vehicle's name is going to be Toyota Mirai. So this FCEV here actually stands for fuel cell electric vehicle. Okay, so it's going to run in hydrogen. So this is going to be an electric car, of course, but you don't charge this car. You fill it up the cylinders with hydrogen, and here the hydrogen reacts to create electricity. That electricity is going to run the motor. So this is how it's going to work. So it's in news because recently our road transport minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, has inaugurated this pilot project now. So the car's name is going to be Toyota Mirai, and the company is Toyota Kirloskar along with India's ICAT. They're going to jointly develop this car, and something specific it is considered to be the world's most advanced fuel cell electric car. So the aim of this is to spread awareness regarding hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle technology. So this is completely powered by hydrogen. So you fill the hydrogen as fuel, and this goes for the process. This hydrogen tank undergoes the process. It creates hydrogen, and this in turn makes electricity, and this will get stored temporarily in a battery, which is going to act like a buffer, and then which is going to run the motors. So that is how the thing is going to work. The next topic is about gallium nitride. Gallium nitride ecosystem enabling center and incubator, something called as GEECI, has been set up in Bangalore under the MeitY Ministry and Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. This is because this is the second most important material after silicon for electronic chips. We have already discussed in detail about semiconductor chips, electronic chips, how important they are for us. For that, the Indian government is already having something called as a semiconductor mission, because we know we don't manufacture any electronic equipments like a cell phone or a computer, which all of these are imported from other countries. Now we are giving utmost importance for the semiconductors, where this gallium nitride again is going to be so important after the silicon in manufacturing of semiconductor chips, and that is why we are setting up a setup in Bangalore for this, and it's called as Gallium Nitride Ecosystem Enabling Center and Incubator, or simply called as GEECI. So about this chemical, getting back to conventional part, this gallium nitride, it has high heat capacity, sensitivity to ionizing radiation, faster switching speed, higher thermal conductivity, and lower in resistance. So all what is needed for a good semiconductor is as a property for this gallium nitride. So that's why it's too important. So it's being applied in semiconductors, used in light emitting diodes, in the field of 5G, space, defense, e-vehicles, wireless communication, and whatnot. Wherever electronics is used, this gallium nitride is used, and that is why it is so important. And that's it for today. Jai Hind. If you have found this content useful, please spread it to your friends also. Let's learn and grow together.